Okay, this is a game I've been looking forward to for a long-ass time. I don't know about y'all, but I love the Prince of Persia games. The originals were before my time, so to speak, but I love the Sands of Time trilogy, and the 2008 reimagining is an underappreciated gem. And after that, it felt like there was a long period of nothing. And then, in the year 2024, we had a long-rumored remake of Sands of Time restart development, and then we got two banging Prince of Persia games within 6 months of each other. The first, in January of that year, was The Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, a symphony of the Knight-tier Metroidvania with incredible platforming and combat, and the topic of today's video, The Rogue Prince of Persia, releasing into early access in May of 2024, and coming out of 1.0 on August 20th, 2025. This was developed by Evil Empire, the live operations developer of Dead Cells. They took all of the experience from working on that game and leveraged it into a pitch with Ubisoft to make their own dream Prince of Persia game. They have an entire video about this process on their YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. I've loaded up a fresh save file because I last checked this out when it first dropped, and I'm eager to see the changes. So sit back, relax, and let's get to steppin'. The story begins with a simple text crawl explaining the prince's initial attempt at fighting off the Hun invaders and their leader Nogai's invasion of Persia. After getting thoroughly whooped, he's found by a mysterious traveler and brought to an oasis outside of the capital city. Awakening 3 days later, the traveler, now known to the princess Pachi, informs him of both his pendants keeping him alive in a time loop and the Huns being bolstered by a new magical corruption that's been spreading to the land. From there, the Rogue Prince needs to find the survivors of the initial attack and a way to stop Nogai and his army. One of the main things I've noticed about Rogue Pop, which I'll be referring to the Rogue Prince of Persia as from henceforth, is how interestingly and weirdly anachronistic it is narratively. I know it's deliberately going for a more fantastical vibe with the inclusions of outright magic in the forms of both the inky black corruption the Huns use and the prince's amulet keeping him in a time loop. But it feels like Evil Empire is kind of sidestepping whether or not the Persia the game takes place in is either post-Islamic Persia or Zoroastrian-era Persia. I don't know, I just thought it was worth bringing up because the Sands of Time trilogy was very deliberately post-Islamic era, between the architecture, the use of Arabic all over the place, and the moon even being kind of a motif in that original game. Nor do I remember there ever being anything about the Huns and Persians mixing it up on the battlefield historically. Does it detract from the setting? No. But it is something interesting to think about. After sleeping on it, though, I'm inclined to believe that it's Zoroastrian adjacent, but that's just me and your mileage may vary. Anyways, I like how a lot of the mechanics and structure of the roguelike are used to help Rogue Pop tell its story. You actually see how the runs and deaths resetting everything is justified, as the Princess Bola amulet sending you back in time. That's right, kids, we got us a Groundhog Day scenario. But what makes it so interesting is that it's only a time loop to the wider city in siege. When you're in the hub area of the Oasis, time passes normally, and it's here where a lot of the narrative progression happens. And while you're out and about, you meet other characters such as the blacksmith Sukra, the aforementioned Pachi, who is a medallion creator, members of the prince's immediate family, an overly flirtatious seamstress by the name of Layla, and even surprisingly, a Hun shaman by the name of Nyamter, though he joins us more out of revenge for being imprisoned by the Hun chief, because he repeatedly warned Nogai that using corruptive magic was a bad idea. Seeing the narrative unfold is actually pretty cool. The main way I could summarize this is when I got to the second boss of the run and found out that the prince's brother Shaheen was being used as an experiment. Later, I managed to find out that he was being held captive with the other scholars for experiments, so I proceeded to find a room above his cell that documented how the aqueducts were in disrepair. After I talked to the village elder who was leading the maintenance project, she gave me a lever that I could use to fix said aqueduct's water flow and use it to get Shaheen out of his prison cell. This took place over the course of 2 to 3 runs. And what makes it so good is the thing in time loop stories where the protagonist retains their knowledge of all previous loop attempts, which helps them do things perfectly, or at least good enough that they can proceed forward. Which, now that I say that out loud, is entirely the reason why Deathloop is so compelling. At least until you had to do that final loop, that is. And it gets into some good stuff with this, especially with the prince's brother Shaheen. And now I felt like I've talked enough about how Rogue Pop tells its stories and whatnot, let's get to the gameplay. Rogue Pop is a roguelite action platformer. In other news, water is wet. A lot of the mechanics and underlying systems in Rogue Pop are informed by the fact that Evil Empire did a lot of live operations development on Dead Cells. And this was in the form of updates, additions, new stuff. Basically, they helped Motion Twin develop all of the DLC in Dead Cells past Rise of the Giant, culminating in the fucking phenomenal Return to Castlevania. As a result, their first full-on video game is something that takes the shape of Dead Cells. And I'm not opposed to this, mainly because Dead Cells was fucking rad. And Rogue Pop is, similarly from a mechanics and game feel perspective, fucking rad. Switching from running to jumping to climbing to fighting, often in very rapid succession, is some of the best feeling a video game I played in 2025 has felt. And in a year that gave us Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, that's fucking saying something. The reason I'm harping on this specifically right now is because in video games, at least to me, the feel of a game sets the tone of the experience. And in the case of Rogue Pop, Evil Empire wanted something that was reminiscent of the Prince of Persia games they were all fans of. Initially, they wanted something more akin to Sands of Time, but found that the rewinding of time was slowing down the gameplay too much, so they folded that into the whole narrative time loop that I was talking about earlier. That aside, this also meant that while fighting stuff still feels good, the platforming is the star of the show. Outside of the standard running and jumping, you also get a wall run that you can hold after it's over to slowly descend, a dash that can be used in the air and on the ground for a little extra distance and momentum, and a downward slam that can be used in combat to get the drop on motherfuckers. These all play off of each other with an energy mechanic that, when its meter is fully charged, enters you into a state called Vayu's Breath. The main benefit of it is that it's a massive speed boost and is the main incentive to try and string together as many acrobatic moves as humanly possible. One thing that helps with this is the level design. Even though it uses a lot of the roguelike procedural generation of level parts, they are all designed with the platforming mechanics in mind. Hell, there are even rooms that are straight up dedicated traversal challenges that unlock new weapons and medallions. And the theming of these levels is also incredible as well. You start off with the ruined outskirts of Zagros Village, and then from there you get to the capital city's ruined aqueduct, its main scholarly academies, the flooded remains of the royal gardens, the Hun's personal war camp, the outer and inner ramparts where you fight some of Nogai's corrupted generals, my personal favorite area in the game, a combination prison and grave tower known as the Tower of Oblivion, and the last two areas that were added in the 1.0 release, the Palace Gates and the Persian Royal Palace itself. I haven't gotten footage of those because those are fucking cool. See them for yourself. And the theming of the hazards is based on these levels, like the hanging poles in most levels being man-eating plants in the gardens, or the spikes being brambles or circular saws, etc. It's very cool. The combat feels a lot like Dead Cells in that it's fast-paced and packs a punch. And it also got a lot of Prince of Persia feel to it with the acrobatic dodges to avoid damage, and generally being fast-paced, on top of the kick that lets you knock enemies away or into each other to break armor. And that aforementioned Vayu's Breath mechanic also fills up when killing enemies, which, now that I think about it, feels a lot like the adrenaline mechanic in Dead Cells. But all of these wouldn't be much without weapons and tools. The former are what you would expect. They're weapons used to fight bad guys, and the latter are supplemental items that let you fight stuff better. My favorites being this hook that pulls enemies in Scorpion style, or this one lets you teleport behind enemies. For weapons, you got nearly 30 of the bad boys, and my favorite is the greatsword called the Slayer, and I see you, Evil Empire, you aren't slick! Unrelated, I recommend reading Berserk. It's not for the faint of heart, but chances are high that something you like was inspired by it. Back on track, you have a lot of choices to make in terms of weapons, tools, and medallions. My best build of that stuff so far has to be this one that includes 2 legendary medallions. One where dashing makes it so that way I enter Vayu's Breath, meaning I can have the benefits permanently, and another legendary medallion that makes it so that I'm constantly on fire while Vayu's Breath is active. You can see where this is going. And you will need those because fights will be brutal and fast, the bosses in particular. Not be rude. She's the first boss, and while she isn't easy, perchance, she is for me because I've whooped her over a dozen times. It's Petard that's the roadblock on my runs because of the magic nonsense and the phase transitions that require sudden platforming that fuck me up each time. And there's also the meta progression that makes it so that way you need Soul Cinders to unlock all of these, and unlock new appearances from the seamstress for fashion, and keep up with Nyumtar's journal, which gives extra upgrade currencies, and the 7 skill trees that make you better at a variety of different areas like platforming, fighting, enhancing Vayu's Breath, and more. There's a lot of stuff in Rogue Pop mechanically, and here's where all of it leans on Evil Empire's Dead Cells experience, because it feels like it was taken from it almost wholesale. And that's not a bad thing, because those systems work to make Dead Cells one of the best roguelites on the market. And I dare say that between those meta progressions being more refined versions of that stuff, and the absolutely pristine feeling controls and movement, Rogue Pop is on its way to clawing its way up there. Yeah, I said it. Rogue Pop is that good. Now let's talk about the feast of an art style. I don't need to tell you that the art style is incredible in the Rogue Prince of Persia. Look at it. It's amazing, isn't it? You look at it. This is mainly because the art style went through the biggest amount of iterations during early access. Originally, it had a much simpler looking and purple art style that it had its charms to me, but apparently not many others thought the same. Art is subjective and all that. So they changed it, but it wasn't until 1.0 that I loaded it back up and saw what they were going for. The environmental art as well as the background and vista art in particular are fucking jaw-dropping. Like, oh my god, it looks incredible. Rogue Pop genuinely is, from this standpoint, one of the best looking games of the year, and I'm not afraid to say that. Same goes for the character designs, with the various enemies you fight, bosses in particular, being the standouts. Their darker color schemes held together with the inky black corruption that sustains them. To loop back to the environments real fast, the areas you traverse on the different runs all come together to form a kind of destroyed beauty in the ruins of this Persian city beset by war. And then there's the music. It was composed by Daniela Asadi, a Persian-American musician who mixes traditional Persian instruments and sounds with modern genres. This leads to a phenomenal mix of styles between those aforementioned Persian instrumentals with modern techniques and genres. And it's one of the best soundtracks of 2025. And in a year that gave us Expedition 33, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, and also a Shinobi game with T. Lopez doing the soundtrack, that's fucking saying something. It's also Asadi's first game composing credit to boot, and it's got some of the fattest beat drops I've heard in ages. It's so sick. In all seriousness, Rogue Pop is a feast for the eyes and ears. It's that damn good. The Rogue Prince of Persia is hands down one of the best games I played in 2025. On top of also being a roguelite so good that it can stand toe-to-toe with the genre's titans, it's also a damn good Prince of Persia game that is not only a sick-as-fuck platformer, but also leverages its structure to tell a really good time loop story. And that's on top of the soundtrack so good that I had it on loop on Apple Music. This has the most of most star seal of approval, 10 out of 10, no notes, absolute cinema. And that'll be it for this week's video. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you did, and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a good weekend, and don't forget to practice your parkour.